Hey everyone, welcome back to Mangastorian, where I give you my reactions to reading old manga that many of you probably read about 20 years ago or have already watched the anime for. On this particular series, we're going through One Piece, a series that I have never looked into, been interested in, or whatever, but we are about to cross halfway through the entire series, and that's incredible because I've committed to something for longer than 2 weeks. I have the attention span of a coked up squirrel, and this is proving otherwise. If this is your first time watching my reactions to something, currently we are on Thriller Bark, and we're going to be doing the second half of the storyline. I left off our videos here with the crew waking up after having their shadows taken, and we're going to go to the end of Thriller Bark and some amazing moments. I am reading the story, not watching the anime. Particular moments that may have stood out for you might not stand out the same for me. That doesn't mean that I missed them or didn't notice them. It means that with my ADD-natured videos here, where I ramble about the things that I wrote notes about, I just didn't think to mention them. I'm not missing things, I'm reading the entire story. I just don't care about the things you care about. Anyway, now that I've said my piece, as I have to at the beginning of every one of these videos, and if you don't think I have to, the moment I don't say that intro, half of the comments will say, how did you not watch this, or notice this, or see this that is in the anime? That's why I have to say this at the beginning of everything. But before we move forward, let me remind you of two things. One, our sponsor is Gamersupps, and check out these shorts. Now, you can't get these shorts because that was a deal a month ago, but what I'm getting at is you should be checking out Gamersupps on the regular so you can get shorts that you would probably never wear in public, but you will wear on your manga-oriented channel where you talk about manga. Make sure you use the code COMICS. The link is down below to get yourself, Gamersupps waifu cups or shorts like this or hoodies or whatever they're currently selling. And our second sponsor is Mangastorian. That guy's kind of a dick. But if you go over to Spotify and search for Mangastorian, we've got an entire Spotify lineup of our videos. Check them out if you got some time. All right, let's get into the actual Thriller Bark discussion. Now, like I said, when I last left off, the entire crew had woken up and we discovered that Brook was a part of the crew that had left behind Laboon, and Brook is attempting to stay alive for the sheer purpose of getting back to Laboon, which teared me up because, as I've said, you do something wrong to children or animals, that's when I get sad. Adults, kind of make their own beds. They got in their own situation. So the group basically splits up at that point, and they all head off in different directions with two primary focuses. So we've got Luffy and half the crew going up to fight Gecko Moria, but then we got the other half of the crew going off to save Nami. None of that matters. In like 2 chapters, they all get separated from the groups that they decided to go off with. Like, they make a big series of like, you're gonna go with this person, and you're gonna go with this person, and you're gonna do this, and you can help out that. That doesn't matter. Oars, which is the giant version of Luffy, because his shadow has now been placed into a giant zombie, breaks the bridge, separates the groups. They all end up in different stuff. So what ends up happening is everyone gets separated. So we're going to go through them one at a time. Usopp's battle against Perona, I believe that's how you pronounce it, the ghost girl who can make people negative, is awesome because she doesn't know how to handle someone who's already so negative that he's unaffected by the negative ghosts. I loved that entire moment. Usopp trying to figure the whole thing out. I loved him running around dealing with Perona, and also putting together the fact that she was afraid at one point, but then wasn't afraid. He then pulls out Sniper King, which I love that this is a reoccurring character for him, and gets to the battle with Perona. I just thought it was a great back and forth. It was a comical battle. I enjoyed it, but it also showed the levels that Usopp is able to go to when you put him into a corner. It was just fun. Sanji, I loved his little battle with Absalom. I think it's Absalom. First off, I just want to comment because I even have the note here in my notes for this particular sequence. See, this is what I'm talking about. You may think something else is important, and this is what I found important. When Sanji was being negative, he was upset he had curly eyebrows, and I found that funny. So I wrote it in the notes. That's the most important thing for this entire series. Anyway. And also a quick, because I'm looking at my notes right here, Usopp's negative. I was incorrect. I said last time 500 years Brook has been a zombie, or not a zombie, a skeleton. It's only been 50 years, which makes far more sense for Laboon to be alive still. Because I know I didn't read the comments for it, but I'm assuming somebody left a comment about it, so I'm just throwing that out there. It's in my notes at this moment. So Sanji's battle against Absalom trying to save Nami. I thought it was hilarious because we all know Sanji's kind of perverted. Well, so is Absalom. So they would keep trying to save Nami and then get stopped by like, oh my God, it's a goddess. No, it's an angel. And they're just both trying to save Nami, who's completely unconscious and in a wedding dress, which is why they're both finding her a goddess and an angel. And it's just hilarious. I loved that. Sanji's growing on me even more. I was never against him. He was always one of my favorites, but it's just whenever Sanji gets a chance to shine, I really enjoy that. During all of this, where everyone's kind of separated up, Zoro gets to fight against Ryoju. It's similar to that, but it's not too important because Zoro kind of defeats him quickly. I think in the manga, it was only like 2 chapters, which is probably like half an actual episode. I don't quite know. It didn't take long. But Brook, his shadow is inside of this ancient samurai warrior who's using a blade. But I've been told that this sword is important and to know this one, so I wrote down the name so I would try to remember or at least learn how to pronounce it. But it's Shushui, and if I'm wrong, let me know how to pronounce it in the comments down below. Again, I'm reading the manga, not the anime, so I'm just reading it how I'm reading it. That doesn't mean I'm saying it correct, and I know that, as you guys have all told me, with Usopp. And at this point, I don't care how you think you say it, I'm just going to say it that way. Anyway, the battle is defeated. Zoro is just awesome. Defeats that samurai with almost no effort, which I did love. Gets this blade, which later on in this battle, when he's fighting Oars, I do like that he comments that the blade is heavier and therefore he doesn't know how to use it properly. So it's something he's going to have to train and learn how to use. I know I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but as I said in one of our previous videos, I do have ADD. I do ramble. I do go all over the place. And I'm trying to tell you guys what I remember and what's important. So I'm trying to keep to the characters and the big moments that each character had to try to go over. So I know later is when he comments that the blade is heavy and it's causing problems, but I just wanted to talk that black blade is awesome. And I love the fact that Zoro defeated the samurai in a hurry. And I do like that sword Shushui. And I've been told these legendary blades are going to become more prominent and more important because up until now it's been like, yeah, he has them, but he breaks them and it's not super important, but the concept of legendary blades is important. Anyway, all I'm saying is I'm aware that this sword is important, and so I'm trying to keep an eye on it. During these battles, I don't remember exactly where this happened, but I do remember the panels. But the zombie that has Zoro's shadow in it and the zombie that has Sanji's shadow in it still can't get along. So they're still arguing, even though they're not even attached to the people. They're just 2 zombies not getting along now. It was just a fun little note that I enjoyed about this Thriller Bark conclusion, that some of their characteristics kept through. Just like Oars still acted like Luffy, I'm going to be the king of the pirates. Why can't I stretch? What's going on? You know, it's just all the fun moments of the characters not being in their right bodies. And it was a great way to do it, because we didn't like lose Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji, and they were just goofy. No, they were still there. We got to have the fun, like, oh, it's almost like a pseudo clone, but it's their shadow, which kind of acts like them for an undetermined amount of time, basically however long we want it to be comedic, and then they turn into the big badass that they're supposed to be. I liked the way they did that. I also have the note in here that Sindri finally resisted against Dr. Hogback. There was a moment where she actually fought against him, and we got to see that possibly the Shadow might be able to fight against the commands given to them by the owner. It comes back later because we get to see that kind of thing stand out a little bit more, but just a fun little moment. And then, of course, Oars defeats the entire Straw Hat crew. At this time, Luffy has been fighting against Gecko Moria. And they've been having their battle. They discovered how hard it is to actually hit Gecko Moria, since Moria is like doing the shadow attacks, keeping himself separated. He does get to kick Moria real quick, but then pretty much gets removed from the fight and thrown off to a far off island, which is why I haven't mentioned Luffy, because in standard anime shoujin fashion, our strongest hero needs to be removed for a temporary amount of time in order to see something else happen, which is the entire crew fighting Oars and losing to zombie Luffy. During all of this, Nami defeats Absalom, starts running back to the main group. It's not that big, the whole Absalom thing. I kind of was like, it's funny, but it's kind of going on too long. I don't know if the anime dragged it out or if it felt like it was dragging out too much there. But I liked the concept initially, like Absalom's trying to kidnap Nami to marry her. But at this point in the story, I was kind of like, well, Absalom's not even a threat. Sanji just defeated him. So this whole thing just kind of needs to resolve. We need to get her away from Absalom. I'm getting a little tired of seeing this like, oh, I will marry you. I will make you my bride. And then at the same time, we have Lola, the hog, chasing Absalom around, and that's going on. It was fun for the comedic effect to kind of pepper into the middle of all the fights. But as I've gotten used to with a lot of the One Piece arcs, We have all that comedic stuff in the beginning, and then we just do fights. We just do fights all the way through. Everyone gets their turn. So I was getting a little tired of the Nami thing, so it was great that she got to run off and come back to the crew at this point. Whole crew gets back up. They begin to battle against oars. Again, each of them showing off cool things that they can do. You know, Black Boot Sanji. We get to see Zoro. This is when he made the comment the sword is too heavy, so he can't do it properly. And I also loved Nami creating a thunderstorm from like crazy far away, and Usopp being the one that's like, it's Nami over there, away from everyone. Oh, and she's like, shut up, they're gonna notice me. That was fun because of course it'd be Usopp that would pick that out, you know, like, and point it out to the giant zombie. Also, I've got the note in here and I didn't mention it, but I also loved Chopper's small moment of standing up against Dr. Hogback a little bit earlier. Because he's like, you're not a doctor. And like, because Chopper like admired Hogback and what Hogback was doing, only to realize how wrong this is. And I like that we did have that brief moment where Chopper's like, no, this is wrong. And what are you doing? And blah, blah, blah. I liked that. We didn't just leave it off with, oh, I admire Dr. Hogback. We actually closed that like loop. But then we have the situation where oars can now stretch. And we discover that Gecko Moria is inside of oars, almost like he's a giant robot. And he's using his shadow to allow oars to stretch. And the logic behind that really didn't make much sense to me. Like, if you think about it for a moment, like, and this is what you shouldn't do when you read manga, think about it logically. If the shadow is stretching, how does the flesh and everything stretch? Like, we know that Luffy's rubber-based, but the zombie is sewn together. And I did have a weird moment where I was trying to decide why is that working, and then I realized it's One Piece. Don't overthink it. The shadow's letting him stretch. Just go with it. Anyway, while this is going on, Luffy is over on the island, and we finally see where everyone went when their shadows were removed, because that was another thing I was thinking about. If we've got an army of 1,000 pirates that have lost their shadows, is there just 1,000 pirates off in the ocean? And on top of that, if the pirates then get touched by sunlight, they'll die. Well, wouldn't that make the shadow die as well? Because wouldn't you then want to keep all the pirates captive on your boat to ensure that they don't burn up in the sunlight and you lose your shadow army? I actually Googled this to see if anyone else thought this one out. Like, why would you let the pirates go if they can die and you lose your soldiers? And no one knows. No one on Reddit has an answer. They're all just like, I mean, the pirates are probably in hiding because they don't want to die, and that's the assumption. I feel like it's a real weird plot thread that, like, should have been referenced. Like, we let the Straw Hat Pirates have, like, 300 billion berries or whatever on their heads or something like that. And we're just going to let them go. They still have their powers. It just feels like a weird oversight in the story. But we do find out where a lot of the pirates are hiding, which is in a forest nearby where Gecko Moria is at. Another thing that I find to be a weird oversight in the story, because if they're all a part of this giant island that Gecko Moria has turned into a boat, how well are they hiding? Because there's a lot of them. And no one seems to have known they exist until right now. There's not even like oh, there's the pirates we've been seeing kind of a situation. And the pirates explain that they've been capturing shadows. All I'm figuring out here is Gecko Moria is the worst of the 7 warlords and clueless as to everything that is going on. So anyway, we're on this island, and they've been capturing shadows, and they've decided that they can put them into Luffy to give him a temporary boost in power. Make him Nightmare Luffy. So that goes through. He gets pumped up. Now he's blue, because I had to look up what it looked like in the anime. He's blue, and he's giant, and he's Nightmare Luffy with an insane amount of power that he can't control fully. So we go back and forth. Everyone's battling. We're having all their moments. And then we get Nightmare Luffy versus Zombie Luffy, which is awesome. I love the way it went through. There's not much to really discuss as any epic particular moments, because it really was just Nightmare Luffy just decking oars and just kind of ending this, which kind of started a constant loop of anime-style finale or like JRPG-style finale where they would win. And then I almost feel like Gecko Moria is like, but that's not even my final form. And he would just get back up. At this point, the storyline moves into almost a race. The Straw Hats are not going to go back into hiding, so they're basically trying to defeat Oars and Gecko Moria before the sun comes up, when they're going to disappear. The battle pretty much goes back and forth because Oars can't be truly defeated because, 1, he's a zombie, so he lives forever. 2, he's got Luffy's like mentality of I won't give up. And at the same time, Gecko Moria is stretching him out and making him do crazy things. The battle goes on between Nightmare Luffy and Oars until Nightmare Luffy wins. Nightmare Luffy loses all the shadows. And then through a combination of Sanji, Zoro, and Luffy doing awesome maneuvers, pretty much it resolves with Luffy using Gear 3 to just decimate Oars, which was awesome. Luffy then shrinks. We make more comments about him being a small child again. It doesn't last very long, which is great. Because then Gecko Moria absorbs every shadow in the area, trying to kind of recreate what Luffy did with Nightmare Luffy and become like crazy overpowered, but he can't contain the power. So the race continues, trying to defeat Gecko Moria before the sun comes up to force him to release the shadows and save everyone. Luffy then uses a way to combine the powers of Gear 2 and 3 to finally decimate Gecko Moria, ending this entire conflict. The crew is losing their bodies, they're disintegrating, but the shadows all arrive just in time. There's like a whole chapter where they're like, oh my god, we didn't save them, and the entire crew is disintegrating. Maybe this would have had more weight back when the story first came out, but me knowing that there's still another 600 chapters for me to go through, I was kind of like, you're really dragging out their deaths, aren't you? Because I know we're gonna find a way to save them in a second. There's no way around it. There's a lot to come. Also, if this is where One Piece ended, it would have been the most anticlimactic ending to One Piece. Like, all right, we've gone 500 chapters, but we got canceled, so they all disintegrated. I guess like a meta ending, but yeah, it would have been terrible. So I wasn't really concerned about people being lost there. We then go back to the other of the 7 warlords that is on the island. Now, I haven't mentioned him yet because I am trying to keep some form of track here so you guys know where my ADD-riddled brain is going. Kuma. Kuma is this, what it turns out to be like a cyborg / android. I think android, but also it was weird because they made the joke about Frankie being a robot earlier in this chapter, and then he's obviously a robot, but is he the human brain? I don't fully know. The way it was described was more cyborg, so I'm going with the same thing. And he has the bear paw ability, which allows him to basically reflect anything that hits him. So we go through everyone trying to battle against him. They're all pretty much removed. And Kuma is the only one left, along with Sanji and Zoro. And this is a super, super epic moment, and the big one that I really wanted to talk about. And I had to look this one up as well to see if I missed something. So Kuma comes down, he defeats Sanji, defeats Zoro, and he says, look, I'll let you guys go if you let me take Luffy. And it's because Luffy's going to die anyway, let me take Luffy. Zoro stands up against him, so does Sanji. Sanji sees this happening, but Sanji does get removed towards the I forget exactly why. I think Zoro knocks him out so that he can't do it. It's sometimes the panels get a little jumbled with everything going on, but I'm pretty sure it was Zoro knocking out Sanji. I might be wrong about that. But anyway, it comes down to Zoro and Kuma. And Zoro says, Kuma offers to give the pain and suffering that Luffy is going through to Zoro so that the pain and suffering won't be so much that it will kill Luffy. So basically, giving Zoro the option to share that pain and suffering with Luffy. But he's warned that it will kill him. He will die taking on what Luffy has taken on. Zoro accepts. And so using this weird bear paw bubble thing, he pulls it out of Luffy and he puts it into Zoro. And Zoro might die. Now, again, if I wasn't reading this so late in the life of One Piece, maybe I would have been more concerned because this was set up like Zoro might actually die. But I do know there's 600 chapters and that Zoro does some cool stuff, so he's not. But that doesn't change the moment of what he did for Luffy. So we cut away to later on. Sanji wakes up first, and he walks over to this cliffside to see what did Zoro do, and Zoro turns around, and he's just covered in blood, and he's injured, and he just says, it's fine, and basically says, we're not talking about it, and leaves it at that. Now, this is where I was confused, and I reread the chapter twice, because I kind of got what Zoro did, but I was very curious if I had missed something. And I was like, there's no way. If somebody says that I missed an obvious thing that explained exactly what Zoro did, I'm never going to hear the end of it. Hence my joke at the beginning. See, I'm like a giant One Piece arc. I made it come full circle. But that was the point of me making the joke at the beginning, because I actually reread these chapters 2 to 3 times to make sure I wasn't missing some obvious line from Kuma that actually fully explained what is going on. And then I asked Kevin, what did I miss? Because what I took away from that is that Zoro agreed to take some of the pain and suffering from Luffy, spread it out amongst Luffy and Zoro, which confirms what I said 2 or 3 episodes ago, that I feel like Zoro's becoming the first mate. Like everyone is on that level, but he's officially the first mate. Right now, the guy filming this, Dan, is shaking his head at me. So what did I miss, Dan? The correction from Dan, the video guy watching me, is that my wording was half. He's saying all. And I was a little confused by, did he take it all? Did he take half? But I think, like, overall, the same concept remains. He took the pain and suffering from Luffy so that Luffy could continue to go towards being the king of the pirates, because he was told that Luffy would die eventually from this. So I apparently didn't, and I got the grasp on that, but I did want to make sure, because I do get the comments of, you missed this very important scene, and this felt very, very important, but at the same time, the threat of Zoro dying wasn't there, because I knew. So it made it a little weird to be like, well, how important is this? It's a pretty cool and memorable scene. It's very heartwarming for Zoro and Luffy's friendship and what's going on with that, but at the same time, the threat for Zoro isn't there. So how much did this actually mean in the grand scheme of things? So I did look into that, and I did double check all of that. We then move over to what I'm going to say is probably an annoying episode of the anime, but not at the same time. There's like 2 or 3 chapters that is this long song from Brook explaining Brook's crew and Laboon and their history. Now, reading this was awesome. I loved it. The crew was amazing. I loved how, like, heart-touching and warming the crew was. I loved how they cared about Laboon. Laboon was their big purpose. I felt bad when the captain was pulled off the ship. The whole story, seeing Brook there in the final days, trying to get the song, like, and dude, like, I got really misty when they sang that song for the last time, and the song was like, and then we're a quartet, and then we're a trio, and then we're a duo, and then we're a solo. And I'm like, oh. And they all just want to get back to Laboon and keep their promise with this whale who just wants to be their friend. But reading it, I'm like, was this like a 2-episode spread of a single song just going on? This must have been so annoying. So let me know in the comments down below. I meant to watch that episode before this, but I want to keep reading One Piece, and I need to make these episodes before I continue so I know my breaking point. So I'm going to watch the episode later to see how it was. But it was so moving in the manga, and I just feel like maybe this is the first time in the anime where I would have been like, shut up, tell me what's happening. Dan is nodding his head, so I'm assuming it was like that. But it was great in the manga. I loved that moment. It was so sad and heartwarming, and it was just great. And I finally get the whole thing, the whole wraparound with the whole sequence, and that is where I left off. There's a reveal because Lola shows up and shows how these papers work, and he has one of the papers of Ace, and there's a reveal that Ace is going to die soon. And so they're like, oh, it's Luffy's big brother, and he's going to die. And that is where I left off, because according to my guide here, that's the end of the arc. I'm moving into the next arc now. So that's where we are. I hope you guys enjoyed today's rambling session. I actually want to ask you guys a question. So when I make these videos, I don't want to make them. And I don't mean that like I don't like making these videos. Do you have anything in your life where you love doing it, but going from point A and then point B to doing it, you don't want to do that middle bridge? You know, like maybe there's like a meal with your buddies, but you don't want to drive an hour to meet up with them. Or, you know, you love doing a raid in like a video game, but you hate setting aside time to do it. Things like that. That's what I hate about, I love rambling when I'm here, because I feel like I'm just talking with a bunch of buds about my excitement, about what I'm now considering the greatest story in existence. And I love doing them. But to go from sitting on my couch playing video games to sitting here with Dan and organizing my thoughts, I don't like that. So I've been trying to come up with a better way to get my thoughts organized, but also enjoy doing these videos more, which is what I think we've fallen into, where I kind of go through each character beat by beat and what they all did, and then kind of how it all came together. But I want to know, is it too much? Am I too rambly? Is there things that you would prefer I clean up with this? I'm actually asking, we're halfway through, just under halfway through One Piece. So I'm halfway through this series, and we're about to branch into doing this with Dragon Ball and Black Clover and other manga that I'm reading. Also some anime discussions. So before I continue this series with other series, I want to know if there's things that I could clean up that you guys would enjoy more, or do you enjoy just me being excited? Because I'm trying to keep the excitement. I don't want to turn this into All right, guys. So that's when Zoro did this. Now, looking into the wiki, Zoro's sword truly means, like, I don't want to turn it into that. I like having these more free float discussions. But if you guys are having a problem following what I'm saying or what's going on, this is me actually asking you. And I am going to look at the comments to an extent. I'll probably have Dan look at them and kind of give me the ones I need to so I don't get spoilers. But you guys have also been great about that. The times that I've looked at the comments, there's never been any drastic spoilers or anything like that. And so thank you so much. This community has been incredible. And I love what we're building here at Mangastorian. But more than that, I love being a part of the One Piece fandom for the first time ever. It's never something I've considered being a part of, and you guys have made it so much more fun to be a part of this community, which is why I'm asking for what you would like to see in this series moving forward. We've gone halfway through. You got 500 chapters of Benny doing it one way. Do we need to shift or change anything around? On that note, like and subscribe, like usual, on the YouTube Jazz. Check out our sponsor, GamerSupps. If you want to get a shot at some cool shorts, and check us out over at Spotify and stuff like that. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you next time.